Thanks. Good evening and welcome to the February 16th regular board meeting. If you'll all please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Is there a motion to approve minutes from the January 11th organizational meeting, the January 17th Finance and Facility Committee meeting, and the January 19th regular board meeting?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Horn. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Mrs. Coates. Any corrections to the minutes at all? Any discussion? Okay, Mr. Gooding, can you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Pickle-Antonio?
Yes.
Mrs. Mooring?
Yes.
Mrs. Coates?
Yes.
Mrs. Horn?
Yes.
Mr. Manley?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. We are going to begin this evening with some recognition of some of our amazing students. And looks like we are going to begin, I would like to have Mrs. Wagner come up. And if you, Mrs. Wagner, if you could come over to the microphone and introduce the student that you have with you tonight and let us know what kind of performance we should be expecting. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Deagle and the board for allowing our student to share tonight. I'd like to introduce Sydney Hooks. She's a fifth grader at Jefferson Elementary. One of our wonderful leaders, a little bit shy, but this year she has found her voice through a poem she wrote, and so I'm very happy to have her share that with you tonight.
Okay, I don't know. I have a dream, he said. 1963, the year he inspired thousands of people. August 28th, the month and day he showed people it's okay to be different. Washington, the place where tears would fall and we would rise up tall, all because he had a dream. A march, the way he brung us into harmony. A dream, the reason we're here today. A dream, not the kind where you're asleep, the kind where you fight for what's right, clear the fog from your eyes, and wake up and realize you're here to stay. The words Martin Luther King spoke on that day bring relief to heavy hearts, reminders we are who we choose to be. The legacy remembered today as Martin Luther King Jr. changed our world for the best. He was a hero. He was different from the rest.
Sydney, thank you so much for coming tonight and sharing your beautiful poem. Next, we've got Mr. Barboza, who's here from Middle School East, and I think he's got a couple students.
Members of the board and Dr. Deagle, thank you for allowing me to recognize some students tonight. They worked really hard and are going to share a little bit of what they did to enhance our Middle School East community. These three are good students, but they're really a lot better people. They're great kids to get to know, and I'm excited to share them with you. Yasmin, Caden, and Caleb, all are 8th graders at East, and I approached Yasmin in January sometime, I think, with the idea to create a slideshow for our video wall, and then maybe some accompanying announcements for our broadcast to honor Black Americans for Black History Month this year. And without my knowledge, she enlisted the two young men here to help her. And we all met several times, and you know, the wonderful thing about these three is there was no promise of recognition like tonight. You know, I didn't even know that this was an opportunity then. It wasn't for a grade. They didn't do it for extra credit. They did it because it was important to them and meaningful for them. And their work enhanced middle school East in our community. So I really appreciate everything that they did, even though it was extra work, even though it was extra time, on top of their schoolwork and on top of their sports and things like that that they're passionate about. They were passionate about this. So all of that shone through in the project that they did, and their efforts really have enriched our community at Middle School East. So what they have done and what they continue to do through the announcements have helped everybody understand at Middle School East that Black history is American history too. So we're honored to have them here tonight, and you know, personally, thank you all for all the work that you did. But I want them to have just a moment at the mic. This, you know, really is about them. So I want them to share a little bit. So I'll let Yasmin go first. Yasmin.
Good evening. My name is Yasmin Ray Thompson, and I'm an 8th grader at Gahanna Middle School East. My friends and I had the opportunity to research and create a presentation of 28 influential African Americans to recognize for Black History Month. Dr. Kizmika Corbett is one of the influential African Americans I chose to research because of her participation in the design of the Moderna COVID-19 vaccine. Dr. Corbett is an immunologist at the Vaccine Research Center of National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Disease that was the lead scientist of the Moderna COVID-19 vaccine team. She spent 6 years of her life studying the proteins in other coronaviruses, which led her to design the vaccine for COVID-19 within 2 days of it being discovered. Dr. Corbett is influential to me because of her role in the COVID-19 vaccine, as well as our common passion for medicine. I became interested in medicine in the medical field about 5 years ago after completing an assignment in 3rd grade where I had to research different careers. During my research, I became intrigued and interested in epidemiology and began reading different books, articles, and documentaries on medicine in the medical field to further educate myself. My grandmother was also motivational to me as she studied medicine while in school and later graduated as a certified practitioner assistant. I later learned that my grandmother has been living with multiple sclerosis, a neurological disease, for the past 20 years. Knowing this motivated me to take an even more serious interest in medicine with a focus on neurology. I'm currently enrolled in Made for Medicine, a program designed to support, educate, and mentor African American students with an interest in medicine. Like Dr. Corbett, I plan to study and work hard in order to accomplish my career goal of becoming a neurologist, a neurosurgeon, and contribute to the treatment or cure of MS and other neurological diseases. Thank you, and have a good evening.
Hello, I am Caden, and I wanted to discuss the brilliant Claudette Colvin. Claudette Colvin was the age of 15 in Montgomery, Alabama, pregnant in her teen years. Colvin was the first African American to ever give up her seat on a segregated bus. Yes, everyone knows Rosa Parks got arrested and kicked off the bus because she failed to give up her seat. But it was also 9 months after Claudette did the same thing on the exact same bus transport. It catches my attention when I ask the question that is posed to my generation: who was the first African American to give up a seat on a segregated bus? They all in unison state that it was Rosa Parks. A quote from Colvin: "All I remember is that I was not going to walk off that bus," in voluntary unison. Colvin knew that there was a current setback, discrimination, and racism that was very prevalent and acceptable in the time. Yes, she could have walked off that bus or just moved in her seat, but she refused, which really inspires me, because society rolls on a spectrum that follow the rules, so speak, and even if they are wrong. Imagine if she had gone along with the unfairness. Would African Americans still be conditioned to sitting on the back of the bus today? In conclusion, this is why Claudette Colvin captured my interest. Her courage and her fearlessness was a part of moving the country forward. We can take this kind and bravery and apply it to our everyday lives. It may not be a bus situation today, or it could be standing up for someone who's being bullied, or a friend having a hard time, or even helping a teacher. This lesson learned is standing fearless for what is right. Thank you for your listening.
Good evening. My name is Caleb Irvin. I too attend Gahanna Middle School East. I am in 8th grade. I also worked on the 28 most impactful African American slides. As a young African male who has goals to be an NBA athlete and have his own business, I remember days where I would think to myself, if I did not make the NBA or become a doctor, that I would fail my expectations. But Cynthia Marshall has shown me that to be impactful in the NBA does not mean you have to be an athlete. There are many other ways to do so. Without black people like Cynthia Marshall doing the dirty work behind the scenes, the Dallas Mavericks market would not even be a thing. Cynthia Marshall is extremely impactful to me. She's the CEO of the Dallas Mavericks. This not only shows me a black person who is also a woman being extremely impactful, but it also shows me another way to be impactful in the NBA and better yet, the world. Being the CEO of a professional team means you get recognition of no other, which means people and businesses across the world will hear of your name. Before I heard the name Cynthia Marshall, I never even considered owning an NBA team or doing something other than being an athlete in the NBA. But Cynthia Marshall has given me hope. Seeing a black woman, Cynthia Marshall, be the CEO of an NBA team, I've thought deeply of what I can do in the NBA other than being just an athlete. Having a black woman be the CEO of an NBA team of this caliber has made me think I should try this too. If I don't make the NBA, I could become a GM or do something other than just be an athlete in the NBA. Like Mrs. Marshall, I too would like to inspire young and old African Americans that they can do anything they put their mind to. This is why Cynthia Marshall is the most impactful African American to me.
So just in conclusion, I know there's a lot of parents and relatives here. You got to be proud of these guys, right? I mean, they are such a remarkable role model for everybody, and thank you for everything you've done. So I think come up and shake some hands, all right? Thank you all. Good job.
So next, we have from our high school, Dr. Thomas, Mrs. Amerson, and Mrs. Whitfield are here, and I think going to introduce us to some students.
Good evening. I'm Jonelle Amerson. I'm the school psychologist at the high school, and we have Dr. Thomas, English curriculum, and Ms. Whitfield, who's an intervention specialist at Jefferson. She worked at the high school for a couple years, and so we got her involved with our project. Okay. Once you've been at the high school, you're always a part of us. So we would like to thank you all for inviting us here this evening. We are the advisors of Diaspora Voices of Ever-Changing America, which is a program that honors the experience of the African diaspora. We are so excited to be back in action after being on pause from the pandemic. This year was our 9th year of programming. It felt really good to be back. And then on part of our return, we've created a scholarship for our participants to be able to apply for in the spring. And so all of those monies came for our ticket sales. So we also thank you, the community, for supporting us in our return, because this year we will be a part of the spring awards. We start working with our students in the fall, and we are very consciously position our program between Martin Luther King Day and Black History Month, because our goal is to encourage people to think outside the box, and think about the contributions of marginalized community all through the years. In fact, this is aligned with really Carter G. Woodson's original creation of Black History Month. His goal was for always for there to be opportunities to celebrate the highlights of those who come from different communities throughout the year and not just during assigned months. And so, for example, like many of us know Paul Revere, but very few may know about James Armstead Lafayette, which were both key players in the Revolutionary War. So next, you will see two of our seniors. We have Amani Ngoso, who's 18 today. Happy birthday. Yeah, she's a grown lady today. We'll make sure she's registered to vote and all of those good things. Yeah. And then we have Madison Burks, who is also a senior. Both of them are scholars and just incredibly creative and talented. And we've been just so blessed to have them in our spaces. And so their piece tonight is going to reflect the Black experience that includes both the triumph and the tragedy. You will notice that the melody and the movements are beautiful, but if you listen to the words, it's talking about the questioning that sometimes happens when you're trying to find where you fit into a certain space, or where you're looking for spaces to also reflect the voices that you have. And so in light of recent events that have happened in neighboring towns, we hope that you leave feeling inspired to create more space for a variety of voices in your own environments. And we know that empathy only develops when we allow ourselves to rest in the experience of others, and vision comes when we allow ourselves to turn towards light. And so these two young ladies are light, and we just feel good when we're in their space. So we're going to get out the way. It's not about us tonight, but we thank you for your time.
Face me entirely and tell me what's wrong with me. Is it the bridge of my nose or the black on my skin? Is it the fullness of my hips that you couldn't take in? Or is it the bridge between worlds that made you feel this way? Oh, I wish that I had known you feel afraid. Oh, I wish that I had known that it was the bridge of my nose and the black on my skin. It was the weight in the room when I walked in. It was the bridge between worlds that made you feel afraid. Oh, I wish I didn't have to know.
Thank you. And just so you know, we are recruiting. So those 8th graders that are going to be moving to the high school, when you hear an announcement for the diaspora program, come on in.
Just want to say thank you one more time to the students and their families for coming here tonight and sharing with us. We very, very much appreciate it. Thank you. Oh, we didn't? We never call the roll? For what? Did we? Oh. Whoops. Can we do that now? Okay. I got so excited. Sorry. And so next we have our student council president, Blake Briel. I'm just for, it is lovely, the clapping. We don't typically clap during the meetings except during the recognition part of the meeting. So as hard as it may be to hold back, we're going to keep the clapping to the recognition part of the meeting. So thanks for being here though, Blake. We're clapping on the inside.
Our major event was the second Den Day that Student Council hosted during lunch periods at the beginning of February. Den Day is essentially a club fair that shows all the students at the high school the clubs, organizations, and select classes and other opportunities that are available to them at GLHS. The main goal is to show everybody how they can become involved at the high school because, as I've stated just about every month, I'm very passionate that I think everybody should find where their pride, where their family is at the high school, because I think that's how we create a true community here in Gahanna, and I think that's very, very important. We had about 32 clubs participate, and were able to have numerous students become interested in groups that they encountered, and they may not have encountered otherwise. This past month has been a period for year-long committees within student councils to start expressing what they would like to do, as we have a lull between Gahannathon and our work for prom. Jocelyn Balluman, the philanthropy officer, and her committee have begun motions reaching out to the community to get us as involved as possible with places like Grin that are moving location soon, as well as a short trip to the Mid-Ohio Food Bank in the upcoming weeks to help them with their volunteering, which they are at an all-time low for. We have also discussed ideas with other local charitable organizations and churches to see how we can help and how we can pull more groups around Gahanna together so that way we can accomplish common goals. Isa Rivera and the rest of the Wellness Committee, which focuses on mental health, which is a newer committee in Student Council, have finished a large mural containing the word breathe, comprised of Post-it notes that all have positive affirmations and messages on it. It's over in the hamster cage in between L and J building, and so students who pass it have brought up to me all the time that they read those messages when they need it, because there's all kinds of nice little notes about just having a good day and reaching out to someone and just how to keep going even when things, aren't the best. They're also going along in Source website that they want to roll out in March for all this, of the high schoolers to see. The purpose of it is that because there's a large, overwhelming body of information, whether it's contacting counselors, contacting other things that might help you out with your mental health, or even just finding help for tests or quizzes where you might be very stressed. It's all in one place for students to see so that way they can go and find help when they need it. Our Imam Mohammed and the rest of the Diversity Committee has been very hard at work working on presentations for Black History Month and the upcoming Women's History Month and Hispanic Heritage Month. They have also been decorating various parts of the high school with different displays containing leaders and other people that they can present so that way more of the student body is well versed. I've worked with them in order to plan out initiatives for the rest of the year, including for people of different ethnicities, genders, and even later in the year for people who are mentally and physically handicapped at the high school in order to make them feel more included. Finally, Kira Bradshaw and the Social Leadership Committee has planned multiple events and outings for student council members to become more of a team and work closely together, but also to reach out to the student body and see how we can help them with their problems. Additionally, they have presented multiple lessons on how to become better leaders that we are learning a lot from, and very soon we'll be rolling into prom, and I can't wait to see how that goes. Thank you. And I would like to introduce Miss Candor from the high school, the World War II teacher, who is here to talk to us about a very special project.
That is okay. Mrs. Candor is also here as the Gahanna Jefferson Education Association representative tonight. Before you walk away, Blake, does anybody have any questions for Blake? What number Dende did you say this is so far?
2.
Second Dende so
We had
far.
one in September, which was the first one because I really wanted to make that happen, and because in September there were a number of clubs that either didn't have advisors or they were still putting together because a lot had to fall off during COVID.
Yeah.
They wanted to come back later in the year so that way when there were more there, students could see all of those ones.
I think it's great. I know that I have a junior at home who is newly signed up for, I think, 3 clubs.
Oh, really? Good.
Dende, so it's working.
Good.
Okay, so now we'll turn it over to Mrs. Kander officially, who's here for Gahanna Jefferson Education Association, and I suspect maybe talking to us about paper clips.
The first thing I do need to say, sorry, Blake, I didn't mean to bother you. On behalf of GJEA, they wanted me to let you know that they raised $1,300 for the Nothing But Cake fundraiser. So that was one success that they wanted to make sure you guys all knew about. They were very, very proud of it. Oh, those bundt cakes, man, those are delicious. On behalf of my World War II class, I have some representatives that I would rather let them speak about the World War II project because they've taken my class, but they're awesome. And I'm going to step aside and let them chat.
Good evening. I am here to talk to you about Ms. Kander's paperclip project. So one of the first things we learned about when we first took her World War II class, I took it second semester of last year.
Could I stop you for just 1 second?
Yes.
Would you please, would you mind introducing yourself
Oh,
and
yes.
letting us know what grade you're in?
I'm
you.
a junior at GLHS, and I'm Caleb Bowles. All right. So we took the class, and one of the first things we learned about was a school in Tennessee. They started collecting paper clips to represent the amount of Jews that were killed in the Holocaust. So they ended up putting them in train cars. Miss Kander decided to put them in like a mini sculpture that Blake's holding. So we're trying to collect 6 million paper clips to represent the amount of Jews that were killed.
Okay, well, okay, sorry. My name is Jocelyn Blumen, and I'm a senior. And yeah, I took the class, the World War II class as well last semester, so pretty recently. And a quick fact about paper clips is the invention of the paper clip is credited to the Norwegian Jew, Johan Valer. So that's kind of where the connection comes from. And then Blake's going to elaborate more on the connection of the paper clip and why we chose it.
Well, hello again. So, paper clips were chosen for the project not only because they're something that's small and easy to collect in large quantities and they're relatively cheap, but also because during the Holocaust in Norway, Norwegians would wear paper clips on their collar as a sign of protest against what the Nazis were doing in all of Europe. So, as Caleb and Jocelyn had said, we want to collect 6 million to represent one per each Jew that was killed in the Holocaust because that's such a large number that's horrible to even fathom, and so it's something that we can collect a lot of and has a very special meaning to the cause.
Hi, I'm Ara Patel. I'm a junior, and so far we've collected over 2 million paper clips, and it looks like a lot, but it's only a fraction of what we want to get to, which is the total of 6 million.
All right, so one of the main points of the class is twice a year, she has days where we just count paper clips. So she has a lot of trash cans, and they're all filled with paper clips. So
like the
we've
big ones,
yeah,
like the rolly ones,
the ones that you'll put on the curb. So what we learned was when we get these boxes, because we send out letters to people asking to share their story and asking to send us paper clips. When we get these boxes, they weigh them to see how many. But when we count them, when I counted them, I got anywhere from like a box of 100 could have 98 or could have 106. So we spend a whole day just counting so that we can make it accurate. And Miss Kander will make pancakes for us as well.
Yes, so we're super, super fortunate and lucky for that. It makes it so much fun.
So Jocelyn is the president of the Key Club at the high school, and I am the vice president. And Caleb here is also in Key Club with us. And Miss Candor this year decided to take on the role of the Key Club advisor because our previous one had stepped down. So because she is very involved in Key Club and the World War II class, and us all are very passionate about this project, we decided to help her out and take it on for Key Club. And so Key Club has been working very closely with Gahanna Kiwanis in order to help raise all of the paper clips and all the money we need for the actual statue. And so we want to get as involved as possible with the community and are currently reaching out to all other groups such as the VFW, Rotary Club, or even other members of the community to see what we can do in order to raise everything that we need.
So Miss Candor also started taking donations, and we've reached over $5,000 so far, and our ultimate goal is to get to $15,000. And a way to donate is to write a check out to Gahanna Jefferson Public Schools, and in the memo you would put Operation Paperclip.
All right, so as kind of our final point, we have been trying to get a night. We have March 13th planned. We have the annex. We are supposed to have the annex in the high school to count paper clips. We're going to take the trash cans down, and pizza's going to be provided. We're going to have the Kiwanis Club from Groveport, the Key Club from Gahanna, and then we're also going to have Kiwanis members there to help us count paper clips.
Yeah, and if anybody wants to join us, because counting paper clips is super fun, but pizza's also super fun. So we're just throwing that out there for you.
That's it.
Yeah. So, wait, really fast.
Okay.
Just saying we can also, if anybody is interested at all, to get at all involved in this project, we need to raise $15,000. There's that. But then also, if you feel at all connected, you could donate paper clips as well, because we still need lots of those. Or, yeah, you could help us count or anything. Yeah, or spread the word. That also is huge. So, yeah. And did you want to say? Okay.
And I personally never took the World War II class, but obviously through Key Club and just this issue in general, I'm very passionate about it. What really made me feel like this is a very important thing to do was actually something Ms. Candor had said when we went and spoke to Kiwanis about it, was the main reason that this is such a big project is because trying to visualize 6 million as a number is impossible. But you can be asked to visualize 100 of something, maybe you can get that. 1,000, a little more difficult, but maybe you can find something. 100,000, I think we'd use the example of like the OSU football stadium. That's pretty good. But once you get to 6 million, that's just such a large number that you can't even begin to understand. And so something physical like this that you can look at, experience, and truly like understand makes it so much more real and so much more impactful for the people who look at it.
Thank you guys for supporting. All of you have supported us in your letters, in your paper clips, giving us the opportunity to talk about this today. I'm humbled. I'm really humbled. And so I just want to say thank you. And you can see why I love my job. And they're awesome. So thank you for this.
You, Mrs. Candor. Did you have a question?
Ms. Candor, thank you. And keep those emails coming because it's a new year, so I can do a new wave of letters. I'm wanting to know, can someone speak to the reason in the camps people wore the paperclip and or some story about the camps that was impactful to you, but the part about the paperclips and there was some kind of message or something, I understand?
So, I don't exactly know with the paper clips why they were chosen, but I do remember a story that I thought was very impactful for me. It was from the same meeting with the Kiwanis, where I believe you had spoke to someone who they were about 13 years old during the Holocaust, and when they were brought to a concentration camp, their job was to go collect all of the gold out of the teeth of the people who had been gassed or killed. And so that just trying to understand that, especially at such a young age, is just horrible. And so trying to even just wrap my mind around things like that humans can do, and so trying to prevent that for the future is something that I'm obviously very passionate about.
Did you have a question?
Can you just remind me of the day for counting?
It's on March 13th,
March 13th. At what time?
5 p.m.
Thank you.
It's a Monday, yeah. And it's in the annex, so it's easy for parking or anything because there's right there. And the Kiwanis members can come because there's entrance. They don't have to go through the main gate. We can, walk them into the door, and it's really easy and it's very convenient. And, the reason why I do pancakes is because pancakes and paper clips. Now we're going to do pizza and paper clips. I mean, like, it's awesome. And one of the stories that came to us, because we also ask when they're writing the letters, it is about the Holocaust, but it's gone much more in order to make it relevant today with the injustice, intolerance, and bigotry that exist. We had a moment in time in the camps to do something in our history about it, and we didn't. And unfortunately, it is happening. It continues to happen today. And this was a few years ago. I had a student, Quentin, had written a letter to his uncle, and he was, hey, have you suffered an injustice, intolerance? And when he got the letter back from his uncle, he said, just so you know, I was a mechanic for the Tuskegee Airmen, and I don't think I really told you guys, Quentin and his brothers, about the story of what we went through, but I'm so glad you asked. So now you know your story. And that's the beautiful thing about this project. I get to learn about them in a way that they never thought they would know their own family history or our history. And so I just want to thank you. Thank you so much for your time.
Any other questions? Okay, thanks for being here tonight. Next, we have Mal Miller, who's here as President Local of 399.
Hello, thanks for having me. Dr. Deagle, Mrs. Elliott, Mr. Gooding, Mr. Hetzel, and our prestigious board. To give you a glimpse of let me start off. Mal Miller, President of Local 399, Custodial and Maintenance. To give you an idea of what we're going through or what we go through every day is, we get to have fun. We get to joke around with children. That's got to be the best thing of my job, get to make a difference in people's lives. But we also, we get to help out with all the expansions because we all know that Gahanna's going through a big change, a wonderful change at that, and we absolutely love it. So a lot of furniture moving, especially with Black Lake. We just moved a bunch of furniture around that wonderful, big, gorgeous wing, and it was awesome. And actually, a handful of us custodians and some grounds crew, we got to go to I always say it wrong, the one building, schoolhouse. I can never say that right. The one school. And that was the first time that I ever entered it. And let me tell you, it was absolutely amazing to just look at everything. Also a little scary to kind of move some of that stuff. I'm like, I don't want to be the one responsible for this. But oftentimes I get to come up here, and I'm a custodian, so I'll often speak about custodians. But I want to take a little bit of time to thank some of our unsung heroes, our maintenance department. Our maintenance department consists of a few guys. I won't go through everybody's names, but they're often one by themselves, sometimes two, and they're out running around. They're helping each other, and they don't always get the recognition that they deserve. And a lot of us custodians, from all the moving and stuff, some of us are banged up, and we have some people, some men and women out, and oftentimes they come in, they fill in for us, and when the ones are filling in for us, the other ones are doing double, triple duty. So I just wanted to say, thanks to all the men in the maintenance department that, go above and beyond every day. But I also want to thank all of you, superintendents, assistant superintendent, Mr. Hetzel, hit the ground running, out every day, coming, talking to us, engaging, meeting after meeting. Board members, I see y'all out all the time, always there, always asking questions, dealing with our students. From the bottom of my heart, Local 399 thanks you. All right? Have a good night.
Night, Mel. Thank you. Next, see Local 249, Jerry Moore.
So I bring you greetings from the bus garage. Jerry Moore, President, Local 249. I'm going to keep this brief this evening, and I'm going to basically start out by saying this has already been a big year of change for us. Not only change at the top with a new superintendent, a new treasurer, a new COO, a new transportation director, but we have more change coming, and I think you're aware of that. And I just wanted to come here and assure you that we do change every day. Sometimes it's small. Sometimes it's you have a new student on your bus. Sometimes there's a new street on your route, and you just roll with it. So change for us is no big deal. We embrace it. It's an opportunity, and I think that our drivers come and go. If I'm honest, I can't even name some of the drivers I see on a daily basis that I pass in the parking lot. I'm like, oh, when did you get here? But I think I'll end by just saying that it's going to be fine. The majority of our drivers show up every day, walk to their bus, start it, go pick up kids, take them to school. It's our goal to be not noticed, and it's sometimes hard to do in a giant yellow bus, but it's a good day when I don't hear my number called out on the radio. I'm like, oh, what happened now? But I'm going to end by saying that the philosopher Socrates said that the secret of change is to focus all of your energy not on fighting the old, but on building the new. And I think that's where we're at. We look forward to whatever's coming our way, and thank you for your support, and thank you for allowing me to be here. Thanks.
Much for being here, Jerry. Thank you.
Thank
you. Stephanie here? I don't know if oh, you're back. Oh. Okay. Oh, that's okay. I hope you feel better, Stephanie. So could you tell me your name? I didn't catch it.
Sure. My name is Molly Peters.
Molly
and I'm an
Peters.
Educational aide, paraprofessional at Blacklick Elementary.
Well, welcome. Thank you for being here tonight to speak on behalf of Local 299.
Yeah, and I'm just going to be talking a little bit about what has happened at Blacklick Elementary as far as the paraprofessionals go, or the educational aides as we're known. Educational aides, as you might already know, are the silent classroom people who help every student at Blacklick Elementary be successful. They are always there when teachers or students need them the most. They provide unconditional support to our trickiest kids and shower them with love. Without educational aides, our Blacklick family would not be the successful family that it is today. Just an example of some of our successes. This year, one child went from missing class daily because of big feelings and reactions towards staff and students to no problems at all, and attending class full-time with minimal assistance breaks. Another great success story is of a child who had one-on-one aid, not in general classroom, struggling to stay in class throughout their time at Blacklick, to now getting straight A's in middle school. So we are so proud of that child. The structured support aides are a group of professionals that I am so proud to be a part of, and I am looking forward to another great year.
Thank you so much for being here tonight. And I should have said this to all of you, but thank you for what you do every day for our kids. We are on board reports. Looks like I have the first one as the legislative liaison. And I'm going to apologize in advance because this is a little bit of a longer report. So the state budget has been formally introduced, The governor provided an overview of his executive budget recommendations during the State of the State address on January 31st, and then through the Blue Book that was shared shortly after. So I think I talked about this last month. The way that the budget process works at the state is that every 2 years, the process begins with the governor introducing the executive budget recommendations that comes in the form of something called a Blue Book. And essentially, every state agency has their own individual budget that is all part of that overall budget recommendation. And I will say as a side note, if you are at all interested in the history and the structure of the state of Ohio, I would very much recommend that book as reading. I find it really interesting. Not only does it give the current budget recommendation, but it does kind of go through the history of how the state developed into the structure that we have. So the House Finance Subcommittees have started to hear from the various state agencies related to those recommendations from the governor, and the actual budget bill. So the governor doesn't introduce. He is not a legislator. He can't introduce legislation. The actual bill that gets introduced comes in the House. That is actually written by the Legislative Service Committee, and it was introduced in the House yesterday. It is House Bill 33. So they started the hearings before the actual legislation was introduced, but it is now, it wasn't online when I looked. Maybe it is by now. But the House Finance Chair, Representative Edwards, has said that they plan to have the budget bill out of the House and then it'll go over to the Senate by the end of April. So there are a few components of the governor's recommendation that are relevant to us. Number one, the governor is recommending continuing the phase-in of year 3 and 4 of the Fair School Funding Plan. The governor is recommending providing funding for any public or private school that wants to hire a school resource officer. The governor recommends providing $100 million to launch new in-demand career tech programs and industry-recognized credential programs across the state. He is recommending increasing the eligibility for EdChoice vouchers up to 400% of the federal poverty level. He is recommending that the Ohio Department of Education create a professional development coursework rooted in evidence-based strategies for effective literacy instruction, and that the state provide funding to schools and districts to incorporate the literacy training in their classrooms. He's recommending that ODE support up to 100 additional literacy coaches in schools and districts with the lowest reading proficiency. He is recommending continued funding for tutoring services, and he's recommending providing additional college credit plus funding to provide training for teachers to instruct classes on high school campuses. One interesting and important factor to be worked out in all of those recommendations is figuring out how much each of those components cost. The state of Ohio requires that the budget be balanced, and right now the cost estimates vary quite a bit from the governor's office to the Legislative Service Commission. As they go through the budget, they're going to have to come to some consensus about how much each of those components cost. The next thing that I will talk through, so last month I talked about the Senate priority bills for this General Assembly. At the time, I think House leadership had just been established, but no legislation had actually been introduced. Yesterday, House Speaker Stevens held a press conference to announce a series of House bills and identified what their priorities are for this General Assembly. So from the House, I can't remember how many bills they introduced in total. I mean, it was more than 33 because the budget bill is House Bill 33. But Speaker Stevens said that those first 12 bills represent the House priorities for this General Assembly. And within those first 12 bills, there are actually a number of them that are impactful to public education. House Bill 1 is a piece of legislation that would modify law regarding property and income tax rates. House Bill 6 is a bill called Save Women's Sports Act that would require schools, state institutions of higher education, and private colleges to designate separate single-sex teams and sports for each sex. House Bill 8 is a bill that would enact the, quote, Parents' Bill of Rights to require public schools to adopt a policy on parental notification on student health and well-being and instructional materials with sexually explicit content. House Bill 9 is a piece of legislation that would establish the Grow Your Own Teacher program. It would establish loan repayment program for eligible teachers, make changes to teacher licensing and professional development, and make an appropriation. House Bill 10 is the General Assembly's expressing their intent to continue phasing in the school fair school funding plan. House Bill 11 is the establishment of a backpack scholarship program to begin operating for the 23-24 school year. And House Bill 12 is the piece of legislation that would rename the Department of Education as the Department of Education and Workforce, create the position of Director of Education and Workforce, and reform the functions and responsibilities of the State Board of Education and the Superintendent of Public Instruction. The other thing that I want to note is that probably most, if not all, of those bills will, even though they were introduced as their own individual pieces of legislation, they are very likely actually to get pulled into the budget discussions and pulled into the budget, the final budget bill. So as I said, the way that the process works, the governor introduces recommendations. The House is where budget discussions begin and an actual bill piece of legislation gets introduced. The House has several subcommittees in finance that will ask questions of agency directors and have testimony. Once the budget is voted out of the House, it goes over to the Senate where they will debate, discuss. Typically then what happens is that there's not an agreement, and then it goes to something that's called a conference committee, which is when there are individual members from the House and the Senate that are selected by House and Senate leadership that will come together and create what eventually gets passed as the budget. And I would anticipate that the things that I talked about last month as being Senate priorities and the things that I've talked about this month as being House priorities will get wrapped into that. Just a couple other things. I guess the other thing that I should say is that now is when, as a board, we should start thinking about whether there is anything that we want to say about any of these pieces of legislation. So if there are things that we agree with, the things that we disagree with, the way that we can communicate those, I guess, and when I say agree with or disagree with, what I mean is if there are things that we think would be good for our school district or things that we think would be hurtful for our school district, the way that we can communicate that is by communicating directly to our legislators, by doing things like passing resolutions and sending them to our legislators. Now's the time, though, that we should start thinking about that. I guess along those same lines, I think I mentioned to all of you that I reached out to meet with our new state senator, Michelle Reynolds. That meeting was this afternoon. I took off work early to go and meet with her. I gave her a copy of our quality profile and contact information. I gave her some district-specific information about how state funding impacts the district, and thank you to Mr. Gooding for providing that information on really quick notice, and to Dr. Deagle for helping make sure that I had quality profiles to give. I also communicated to her some of the concerns about the revenue shortfall that might happen with the combination of both Senate Bill 11 and House Bill 1. and how they will meet their stated goal of continuing to phase in the Fair School Funding Plan. She is, I also offered to have her come and tour the district, so she and her legislative aide are scheduled to come tour the district with Dr. Deagle and me on Friday, April 28th. Since it has been a while since Representative Lightbody has toured the district, I'll reach out to her office and offer the same to her. And then the last thing, as a legislative update, I just wanted to note that OSBA sent us all an email reminding us that the deadline for any recommended changes to OSBA's legislative platform is May 31st of 2023. Ohio School Board Association is a member-driven organization, and their position on legislative activity is guided by the legislative platform that delegates from every school board vote on annually. Individual school boards are given the opportunity to propose changes to the platform, and the way that we would do that is that we would have to pass a resolution and send it to OSBA by May 31st of 23. Each of those proposals, plus any proposed changes from OSBA staff, goes to a legislative platform committee that meets in August. That committee discusses and votes on what proposed changes goes to the full delegate assembly. So that's how that process works. That was a long legislative update, so sorry about that. I think that's it from me. So next we have an update from Eastland Fairfield from Mr. Manley.
Hi, everybody. As your school board member for Eastland Fairfield, I want to say I'm really excited again to give this report. I went to trade school and it made a world of difference. So I'm starting off by announcing that Dr. Kimberly Miller, Superintendent Dr. Kimberly Miller is retiring, and she has a statement, so I'm going to read this statement, and we're really grateful for our partnership with Eastland Fairfield, and so she just read this real briefly. I'm so grateful to have had the opportunity to work with the students, staff, and families of Eastland Fairfield, as well as our partner school districts and business partners. The accomplishments of our district over the past 3 years are many, and I'm thankful for the Board of Education, their support, visionary leadership, and partnership. The work of our public schools is paramount to our success as a nation, state, and in our communities. It has been my honor to serve students, staff, and communities in Ohio for more than 30 years. I'm looking forward to serving our district and community through the remainder of the contract, and then due to personal affairs, rejoining my family in Cincinnati. And so she was with us last month and gave a wonderful presentation and reviewing all the accomplishments of the last few years, and really grateful to her. And getting onto my report also, exciting things are happening, and Eastland Fairfield met with the members of the Ohio Department of Education and a marketing firm, and they're going to be doing research to develop a campaign promoting career technical ed. And they are surveying parents and students, developing focus groups, and expecting that the state's going to put $300 million into career tech statewide. We're one of 7 career tech schools that was selected for this, and they are identifying projects and having preliminary plans. They met with district leadership here in Gehanna, so thank you for all your work with them. And Shelley Groves, assistant superintendent, reported they hosted a meet and greet with Bryn Strepp from the lieutenant governor's office, and that was to showcase Fairfield Career Center. And she also reported that their application numbers are over 1,400 this time around, which is a new record. And upcoming events there, the high school family tours are March 9th, 11th, and 27th. They go for about an hour. And from February 21st, I think this is exciting, February 21st to March 1st, almost all the associate middle schools will bring 8th graders for visits with hands-on experiences that are totally led by the students, and they're expecting over 3,500 students. So, and we recently had an open house here. I'm sure that was well attended, and there were a lot of 8th grade families, I heard, that attended that. And let's see. Eastland Fairfield also just recently participated in DECA, BPA, and HOSA, and that was regionals. And then the next step is moving on to state competitions. And then I just wanted to briefly highlight VACE, which was a visual arts student contest and exhibit in the Whitting category, traditional art and illustration. The best of show was Akil Rowe from 9th grade for Gehenna. So we're proud of Akil. Thank you. And lastly, for Black History Month, they have Focus Fridays. And that has with a feature story, in each campus is using the Focus Friday to host Black History Month celebrations, spotlighting separately. It's student-led, and they also are. They also had a Black History Jeopardy game, which was completely run by the students. So having fun with that and also learning. All right, so that's my end of my report. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Manley. Next, Mrs. Horn, I think you have 2 reports, Gehenna Parks and Rec and Insurance.
Be much briefer and go quickly through my 2 topics as we don't have as much to cover. For Parks and Rec, the great news is that at the meeting last week, we have moved forward with the overall plan. And that will be on the improvements of Parks and Rec for Gehenna. And they're going to be having a town hall meeting. Right now it's scheduled for March 2nd. I know I connected the director of Parks and Rec with Eric, our public information communications person, to also leverage our database of parents to notify all the families in the district, just because we all use the parks and the recs area so much that would be a good update for everybody to receive. Right now it's going to be March 2nd at 6 p.m. at City Hall. So look for information to come out on that in the next couple of weeks. So that was it for that. Insurance Committee met last week. We got the end of the year update, pretty standard information on what is going on there, and just looking to set our agenda for the year on benchmarking, what rates are going to be. You know, it's one of those necessary things that we all have to worry about is our health insurance, and making sure that we're being very competitive for our members and all of our employees. And that was really it. Thank you.
Mrs. Horn. And then it looks like Mrs. Coates has 2 reports as well, one as the Gehenna Jefferson Education Foundation Liaison and one as our Student Learning and Achievement Liaison.
Thank you. The gala is sold out, so very exciting. 280 guests will be at Jefferson Country Club. But parents and community members can still support the Education Foundation by purchasing raffle tickets and registering for the online auction for free. And you're automatically entered into a raffle for a $250 Amazon gift card. So there's something for everyone to bid on. Gift cards are as low as starting at $25. So the website has more details, but some of the things that the money from this fundraising supports is we have scholarship applications that are now available through the guidance department. So I wanted to make sure everyone knew. The Baker Evan Memorial Scholarship is for agriculture, large animal science. The Chelsea Way Scholarship is for performing arts. The Cindy Herndon Scholarship is for students with IEPs. The Hoyne Family Scholarship is for business classes. Junkerman Nursing Scholarship. The Meckwort Butt Scholarship, which is for students in need. And the Russell Cochran Scholarship. They're also going to be reviewing the Grants of Excellence applications in March. And then I'll just roll right into student learning and achievement. Get my notes. So just a couple updates here. Ohio Teacher of the Year nominations open February 1st and they go through March 31st. This is for the nomination period for the 2024 Ohio Teacher of the Year. And then there's a group support, statewide group support program called the Kinship Caregivers Connect. It sounds very similar to our Connected Caregivers, which I know is meeting February 22nd at 11:30 a.m. So grandparents, uncles, aunts that are raising our students, this is a group that they can get support from. We have the local one, which is the Connected Caregivers, and then I just wanted to make sure everyone was aware of an online statewide support group. That resource hub is called caregivers.kinshipcaregiversconnect.com. And the group does meet weekly on Zoom. The page provides more information. And then the other thing I wanted to make sure everyone was aware of is the Ohio After School Child Enrichment, ACE, Educational Savings Account Program provides qualifying families with a $500 credit that can be used to pay for a variety of educational and enrichment activities that support learning for students impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. This savings account is available to any Ohio child between the ages of 6 and 18 whose family income is at or below 300% of the federal poverty level. Eligible children include those who attend any Ohio public or non-public school or are home educated by their parents and have been excused from the compulsory attendance law for the purpose of home instruction. That website is education.ohio.gov/OhioACE.
Ms. Coates. Any other board reports that I missed? Okay. We are on the public participation portion of the agenda. We've got some people who have not been to our meetings before, so I'm just going to just give a brief overview of what the public participation policy says, because I think sometimes it feels a little bit awkward, the way that public participation works. So public participation is a portion of the agenda that we have chosen to set aside for members of the public to come and address the board. We encourage you, if you are a member of our community or if you have some connection to our community and you have something that you want to come and speak to the board about, to come and speak during public participation. It is set aside for you, so there shouldn't, I guess the awkward part about it is that sometimes it feels like there's going to be a conversation. It's not intended to be a conversation. It is set aside for you, like I said, to address the board. That address should be directed to the board as a whole and not to any one particular board member. We do ask you to fill out these forms and give us your contact information. Oftentimes there is follow-up that will happen from appropriate district staff, not from board members, but from appropriate district staff with you if the issue is one that needs some follow-up. I think we now have a timer that runs on the screen over here. Public participation is limited to 3 minutes per speaker. If you are at the 3-minute mark and you're not done speaking, you can request an additional 2 minutes of time. As long as you're not repeating yourself, that additional 2 minutes will be granted. And I guess with all that being said, the last thing I'll say for those of you who haven't been here before, please don't try to adjust the microphone. It's set and ready for you. You just need to come up to the podium and as soon as the timer begins, you can begin speaking. So I will call the slips as I have them. The first one I have is from Melanie Berman. And the discussion topic, I'm just going to read it because I think, Mrs. Berman, I think you filled out 2 slips. So the discussion topic on this was bridging the gap.
Good evening. This is my husband, Michael. We have a son in the middle school here, was also in the elementary school within the district, and has consistently performed very well. He has anxiety, as do many kids in this school district and across the country. COVID did not help, and before COVID, there were other issues that brought those things on, whether it be home environment or outside factors, what have you, in addition to what will be my next address is the violence going on in the schools. My particular child, as well as I can account for 7 others that I'm not going to name here because their parents could not be present this evening, have expressed the fact that there is nothing that is currently in place to bridge the gap between the advanced classes for the kids that can handle the faster pace and the pressure of the additional homework compared to the non-advanced classes, but the kids are bored. My son will consistently come home every evening in 3 out of 5, 6, 7 classes, whatever they have in the middle schools, and say, it's so boring, oh my goodness, I learned this like 2 years ago, and remarks, what have you. I've said, well, where'd you learn this information? YouTube. Okay, you learned it off of YouTube. Well, why did you go to YouTube? Well, because it's something of interest, and they tell us to read things that are of interest if I don't like to read. So I don't like to read what they're talking about. I like to read these factors. This is what I want to do for a living. This is what I read. This is what I know. Okay, we have these conversations pretty regularly in our home because of how often our child will come home and say they are bored. There needs to be something, and there are plenty of other schools. I don't know about the entire state of Ohio, but I do know, which I'm sure plenty of people within this district will be happy to know, that we are moving after 8th grade. The child is currently in 7th grade out of the state of Ohio because there is nothing to adapt to what he wants to study and his learning style. Everything is pressure, pressure, pressure instead of quality. It's quantity. There needs to be quality understanding for kids who cannot take the pressure, the high expectation, but need their brains to grow and be, and just like a seed being planted needs water to grow, it needs to thrive or it's going to get bored and it's not going to pay, they're not going to pay attention, etc. I don't know how you want to possibly further say anything, but it is not just our child. I can say that without a doubt. And like I said, I'm not going to mention other names because those parents cannot be here this evening due to other, I can't think of arrangements and people already leaving out of town for the long weekend. But there has to be something that can be done. We do a lot to adapt to students who have special needs or different needs in many other forms, but these kids who are kind of just being, I guess, unfed in a way, what they're begging for, that something needs to be addressed. And I am not an educator, nor do I ever want to be one. I congratulate and respect the people who do teach. I can say for a fact that my son has teachers that recognize that he goes above and beyond the expectation. I have had 2 teachers tell me that he always goes far above what is required because it excites him, and that's what should happen. When I was a kid, that didn't happen. So I don't know how to have it addressed, but something needs to be addressed because my kid is not the only kid.
Thank you, Mrs. Berman. Thank you. The next slip that I have is from Christine Vandemark, and it says there's another name on here too. Martin Browning. Are you both speaking? He's speaking. Okay, so Mr. Browning.
Yes, good evening. Please forgive me, my printer decided not to work this evening, and I've never spoke out loud from a phone before, so. Again, my name is Martin Browning. This is my wife, Christine. We're here tonight to share our concerns with the violence in the Gahanna Jefferson School District. Give you a little insight. Our daughter was assaulted at Gahanna Lincoln on Monday, February 13th. She was walking to class with her friend when a girl and her sister came up to her and pushed her to the floor. We were told our daughter may have been unconscious at this point. The girl then jumped on her and started beating her, punch after punch after punch to the face. She beat her to the point to where there was blood all over her and all over the walls. I'm sorry, this may take me longer than 5 minutes, and I think my daughter deserves to hear it. Are you? Thank you. All over the blood was all over the floor and the walls. The girl was so brutal that she actually ripped one of her nails from my daughter's nail bed, jammed her finger in her mouth, causing a large gash. My daughter has not eaten solid food since Monday morning. Not only did this girl and her sister assault our daughter, but they then spit gum in her hair while she lay there bleeding and out of consciousness. This was a completely unprovoked attack. This attack was also recorded by several students and posted on social media. These girls actually had a stay-away order in place through the high school administration for harassing our daughter. They continued to harass her. One morning last month, they pushed her out in front of this high school and called her a whore. She told us about this, and we reported this to the school's administration. This clearly fell on deaf ears. Last year, another girl assaulted our daughter. Same daughter. I have 3 children that go to your high school, and one that will be there next year, maybe. Last year, our daughter was assaulted again. The administration was told this was going to happen the day before it did, just from hearsay. The administration actually sent the girl home and then allowed her to come back the following day just to carry out the attack on our daughter. The day of that attack, several faculty members and the school resource officer were told that this was going to happen again, and it was about to happen. No action was taken to stop this. After that assault, the administration called to apologize to let me know that they failed to keep my daughter safe. This attack ended up with death threats, bomb threats at our family and our home. Both times, the school had information of an imminent attack and harassment and failed to protect my child. Both times the consequences did not seem to fit the crime of these perpetrators. These girls, we were told that these girls had a right to a public education and could not be expelled for their behavior. These girls should have been drugged out of school in handcuffs, put in the back of a police cruiser, taken downtown, and sat in jail. But what happened? They sat in your offices, let people figure out what happened, and they sent home. If I hit somebody on the street, where am I going? I don't get to go sit, talk, give my side of the story. I'm going to jail. We have been told that you cannot give us details on the punishment because these girls had a right to privacy. Yesterday, we were informed by a friend of our oldest daughter that a girl in her class was showing the video of this heinous assault and saying that our daughter deserved it and that she wanted to beat her ass too, but she couldn't because she is in sports and part of your respectable Lincoln Live. I immediately informed the administration and asked this girl be suspended.
I'm going to ask you to wrap up.
wrap up.
We have set policy that everybody follows. We have your contact information.
You have my attorney's contact information.
Thank you. The next slip that I have is from Melanie Berman.
So our child, too, has been a victim, without calling him a victim, because he knows right from wrong, of the violence and behavior in this school district. It started in elementary school by the same student who repeatedly last year gave him a hard time, was not punished, essentially, was given another chance, and another chance, and another chance, and I could go on, has continued to give my child a hard time this year. Not on one occasion or two occasions or three occasions, but more than I cared to count, and have stopped counting. We have talked to the administration. I have gone above the school level's administration. Nothing changes. A second student then attacked my son this year. And I will say attacked because my son did not initiate, nor does he initiate. He fears any kind of arguing, whether it be verbal or physical. The only thing he did was push the child off of him after being hit in the face 3 times. I have photos of his swollen eye with red marks. I have shown this to somebody on this board. It goes on time and time again. There is supposed to be, and there is, unless somebody has done something without notifying the public, of a no bullying tolerance policy. It was said and found by the administrator, one of the administrators at the building, that the second situation that occurred this year was in fact a bullying. That student had the same repercussion as my son, who pushed the student off of them after being hit in the face multiple times. I, as a parent, can tell you that do I know that my child should not have used hands to push somebody? Wholeheartedly. I have said to the person on the board, I have said to the staff at the school, yes, he should have a repercussion, because we say no hands. Detention, 1 day, 2 days, would have been completely understanding and fit the crime, in my personal opinion, as well as my husband's. No. He was given in-school restriction, which apparently we're sugarcoating the word for suspension now. The other student had the same. The other student did not have marks on their face, did not have swelling, did not fear going back. The school didn't see the situation. My son called my husband hysterical. When my husband couldn't understand him, he said to call your mother. I understand my child. There is something about a mother understanding their child, and I'm pretty sure every person in this room that is a parent, it's just like when you have a baby, you understand their cries. I understand because I too fear when there's any kind of confrontation. I have tried time and time again to speak with people on the most basic level. I was asked by an administrator, why am I here? No, why am I here at the school? Not one person from your staff saw this happen. Not one person who was out on recess monitoring saw this happen. Because their backs were to the students, because they were standing together talking instead of being on opposite ends. I come from an insurance background. I know very well, how to prevent things from happening. I would request 2 more minutes.
I think that was miscommunication on my part. It was set to 5 minutes. It was set to 5.
I'm supposed to be notified at the end of 3.
Yeah, we're going to have to figure out our timer, but we're at the 5-minute mark. Thank you very much.
Well, since I didn't get my 3-minute warning, I'd like 10 seconds to wrap up.
You can finish your statement, yes.
So with all of this being said, it's not just happening on one level of the schools. It's happening on all of them. And in the elementary schools, these kids are taught kindness, and they go through this entire agenda, and there's no consistency of it being carried on. And if it was, it's possible that kindness actually might overtake violence.
Thank you, Mrs. Berman. The last slip that I have is from Jeremy Dieter, and I guess just for clarification, the timer is actually set to 5 minutes. So the additional time has already been granted, and when the timer hits 0, that's the end. Thanks.
Will the timer be there? Oh, there we go. All right. So the exact same level of concern that I have seen for the parents and their children tonight remains consistent throughout the schools. You waited until the end as if we don't have lives. You know, I don't know if you guys just wanted company tonight or what the deal was. You thought it would be more important to have people come up here and read poetry than all of the issues you know the parents have to bring up. It's not just violence, right? I can't figure out if Gahanna Jefferson is trying to distract us, from the sexual perversion that has been made obvious, and I have the receipts for in case anybody doubts me, right? I can't figure out if you're trying to distract away from the sexual perversion with the violence, right? Or are you trying to distract away from the violence with the drug use? You guys realize that on Instagram, all of this is on video. It's not just the fights. It's inebriated students in front of the class. Yeah, that's real. They're not just smoking in the bathroom, they're smoking in the class. That's on video. We're not allowed to show the video because it shows the children's faces. Right? This is real. This is what you've done. And I had to ask myself, well, how did it get to this point? You guys talk about equity and things all the time, like that's fantastic. Do we still talk? Because earlier tonight with the Tuskegee Airmen and a couple of other references, we discussed racism. Man, am I glad that was brought up before I got here. Does it still count if it's against a white person? Is it still racism then? Or are we not buying into that? Which one of you is it that's supposed to go through the policy and make sure that everything is equitable? Destroying a system that's been in place functioning for over 100 years, okay? 35 years, Noah Filipowicz, award-winning Disney educator, all right? Jonathan Wolverton, look him up. He's here in Columbus along with Marcia Stewart. Between those 3 people that influenced and educated me, they have almost 100 years of award-winning education. I doubt that any of you even know where the idea of collegiate learning or university comes from because you can't exhibit any of it. You use sight learning when it was showed to be the worst way to teach children how to read, but you adopted it. You thought it was great. You did the same thing with social emotional learning. And everything that's listed in social emotional learning, I see your smugness, but in social emotional learning, all 5 of those things, all 5, are for parents, not you. Teach math. Teach science, teach reading and history. You leave our kids alone otherwise. You have no right. You have no right. And then to be so smug as to tell people that they can't talk about their children. What, because you want to follow a little 5-minute procedure? No, you want this. You want the destruction of this school and these children. You're doing everything purposefully. You can shake your head, but it's a fact. It's in your actions. It's actually on the piece of paper that I was given from my daughter that ma'am asked her,
Do you like to have sex? Do you like to make out naked? Anybody here know a 12-year-old that they like, love, or respect? Would it be okay if I asked them, hey, do you like to make out with most of your clothes on or just some of them? Do you like to have sex? Is that fun? You guys have no right. You're a bunch of damn perverts and criminals. All of you. Shake your head all you want. The facts are right here in front of us, y'all. You're doing it on purpose. You don't give a damn about these kids. You don't give a damn about the parents. It's made obvious. It was made obvious here tonight, but it's made obvious by all the violence, drugs, and sexual perversion going on. And not one of you can prove me wrong. To all of you that are having these issues, I am with you. My name is Jeremy Dieter. I live here.
Dieter,
Whatever. I grew up here.
Mr. Dieter,
I grew up here. They don't want me to talk to you because they're afraid that
Dieter.
all of us will get together. They're scared to
I'm
death.
going to ask you to leave now, Mr. Dieter.
No, I bet you do want me to leave. I bet you do. Look at the timer. 103. That's not my 103. Stop being petty. Grow up. Stop being petty. When parents come here with legit reasons, you don't sit there and hide behind procedure. You're showing us right now how much you don't care. Do you understand what I'm telling you in front of God and everybody? You are showing us, you're validating the position that substantiates saying you don't care.
One more time, and then I'm going to tell you.
You tell me whatever you need to. I got 37 seconds.
You're finished.
No, I'm not. I'm going to stand right here. You're going to listen to me. You guys are perverts. You're sick. You're destroying what was a good school system. Look at how smug all of you are. You have no right to be in the positions you're in. None. You're destructive, and you're doing it on purpose, and we know it.
Cut the microphone,
we watched
please.
Accuracy in Media. We know what social emotional learning is. It's a red herring for critical race theory so that all of you can lie to us. You do what you got to do, but check it out. We all saw the video where the faculty, teachers, and staff said we lied to the parents and we tricked them. I'm supposed to escort him out. You don't have to escort anybody. I'm telling you right now, we know the truth. Y'all are frauds. And you're criminal. And you're disgusting. Deserve every single thing I said. No, hell no. I'm going over here with my wife. You do what you gotta do. No, damn well I'm right. Try to hide behind procedure. You know I'm right. And you're substantiating my...
I'm going to take a motion for a recess. Is there a motion for a recess? Thank you, Mrs. Horn. Is there a second? Thank you, Mr. Manley. Mr. Gooding, can you call the roll?
Yes.
Mrs. Pickle Antonio?
Yes.
Mrs. Mooring?
Yes.
We are going to take a brief recess, and we will be back when everybody has composed themselves. Thank you. It is 8:14 p.m. and we are reconvening following a brief recess. We are on adoption of the agenda, actually. Are there any recommended additions, deletions, changes to tonight's agenda? If not, is there a motion to adopt the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Mooring. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mrs. Coates. Any discussion? Mr. Gooding, can you call the roll?
Mrs. Mooring,
Yes.
Mrs. Coates,
Yes.
Mrs. Horn,
Yes.
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mrs. Pickle Antonio.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. We are on to the superintendent's report, and I am going to turn it over to Dr. Deagle.
Good evening. Thank you, everyone. Good to be here again tonight. Just a few updates from the Office of the Superintendent. First, I wanted to share that we do have some strategic planning that we are preparing for as a district. Mrs. Coates, Mrs. Horn, Jill, and myself, we're currently interviewing some prospective firms to take a look at some strategic planning work. As a reminder, the focus of the strategic plan is to garner as much community input as we can, including our students, our parents, our business owners, and just community members at large, to discuss what direction they hope for our district, particularly in the areas of teaching and learning. And we anticipate that this strategic planning process will give us a North Star to guide future work and lead to some action steps and some planning to perhaps last with us as long as the next 3 to 5 years. We hope to have a decision on our strategic planning firm really by next month, which we will bring to you. And we look forward to beginning to engage our community, perhaps late spring, very early summer. Also, just to encourage you again to hold the date for April 13th, as we will be hosting our State of the Schools address. This is an opportunity for our community to receive updates from our executive team, including Mr. Gooding, myself, Mrs. Elliott, and Mr. Hetzel. Mr. Hetzel, welcome to your first Board of Education meeting. We will offer some celebrations for our district. We'll talk about some of our pinch points as a district, our building projects, and also more about the strategic planning process. So look forward to having that State of the Schools on April 13th at 7 p.m. in our high school auditorium. We did hear this evening some concern that I know we all express, we all feel, which is the concern of rising violence and criminal activity among teens. This is something that is not unique to our schools. As you know, it's happening across Central Ohio. You also know I was in Atlanta last year. It was becoming epidemic there as well. I read recently in the paper, you may have seen this number as well, that the Kia Hyundai car thefts are now over 2,740 in Central Ohio. 2,740. And that's largely teens that are stealing those cars. You remember this summer, the city of Gahanna changed their pool rules because of escalations and verbal altercations and physical violence. And you've heard of some of this happening in our community and our local businesses as well as in our school. So I just want to assure you all in our community, we are watching this. We are collecting information. We are considering our next steps. And truly, as a community, we all must join together and wrap our arms around these teens. There was a recently released summary titled Youth Risk Behavior. And in that summary, the CDC reported a 10-year improvement on bullying and risky sexual behavior among teens, yet no surprise to us, it's showing a significant increase in violence. And there seems to be a correlation between depression and anxiety among our youth and violent behavior and verbal altercations that lead to physical. So again, it isn't, in my opinion, until we wrap our arms around these students collectively as a community that we can really start to chip away at some behavior change and most importantly, providing supports for our teens that they deserve, paying attention to these cries for help. So to that end, to that end, Chief Spence and I are in preliminary conversations to have a formal community conversation. We anticipate that that will take place early March, and in that community conversation hosted by our administrative team as well as city members, our Division of Police, we will be talking about the state of affairs among teens. We will be shedding some educational light on that, as well as some community and law enforcement light on that, and talking about what options we have, what possibilities we have to improve the status in our community. Again, this is not unique to Gahanna. I'm talking to many superintendents about similar issues that they're facing. I also had the good fortune thank you for your support, Board, on that as well. I know that you are very supportive and very concerned about this as much as I am, and I appreciate your support. Last week I had the good fortune of speaking in front of the Gahanna Area Realtors Association. That was a great group. They had a breakfast. Eric Starkey and I went, and they learned some interesting things about the community we all live in. Only 30 active homes right now on the real estate market in our school district. So that is an interesting piece of data, and more realtors are actually leaving the profession right now because of the current market. But we were able to share some information about our new high school, and we were able to share our quality profile and some phase 2 projects. Want to also just say we're continuing to work on the parking situation at the high school, as we anticipate losing more spots, not this year, but in the near future. And I just want to say thank you to our community. We have been reaching out and having community reaching into us to offer to support us and help us with parking. Notably, we have partners with the city and Mifflin Township who want to be part of the solution, and we're so appreciative of that. So Mr. Hetzel is working on parking with Mrs. Elliott and I, and as I said earlier, we will have some ideas and some options for you late spring. I do just want to circle back to the beautiful work we saw of our students earlier in this meeting, and the students who are even still with us tonight. They inspire us, every one of us, every single day. This is why we are here, and I'm just so proud of our students. We had 2 Power of the Pen winners at our district tournament. On Saturday, I was there to give them their medal, which was a lot of fun. So we had 2 8th grade Power of the Pen district placers. 9th place, Evangeline Bjorn from Middle School South. Was a 9th place, and 12th place was Maya Anger from Middle School East. So proud of those students. Thank you for your patience with my lengthy report.
Thank you, Dr. Deagle. Next, we have a report from our treasurer, Mr. Gooding.
All right. Thank you. I'll try to keep this brief this evening. We had our Finance and Facilities Committee meeting on Tuesday. Apologize that it was Valentine's Day, but that was part of the regular schedule that we had set at the organizational meeting, but we tried to get through that as quickly as we could. Thank you for the snacks that got us through that meeting so that we could get home to our loved ones. We had a great conversation. We went through the Phase 2 construction update from our owner's rep, Mark Ogden with Turner Construction, the financial report for the bond issue. We had presentation on use of our ESSER grant funds, as well as an additional request for some funds for the transportation department, monthly financial report, and then one thing that I'll talk about later is we talked about the preview of the tax year 2022 real property complaints. What you have before you this evening in the financial reports, we did talk, it's, again, continues the theme here of good news financially. Revenue's up 3.75%. Expenses are down 1.05%. Cash, the new colored line in our, or the Daphne line, as we'll call it, the mooring line on our variance report is cash is up $3.2 million. So everything's trending the right way. So we're in a very, very good position. So you have this evening the monthly financial reports for January. Appropriations, there are some adjustments on here as well. As I mentioned, we have a $505,000 increase for transportation. We've been talking about this the past few months, that the estimate that we had initially for bus fuel was low. So we have some additional dollars for bus fuel, for tires, repairs, and parts in the transportation department to get us through the rest of the year. So we have that before you. We have an additional appropriation increase for the Fill My Tummy transfer from one of the elementary schools. The high school AP testing increase, we've got 2 new clubs on here for $17,500. We have middle school Washington D.C. trip increase for $2,500 for the appropriation, and this one's just it's a little awkward because we just did this last month, but ODE released grant allocation changes in January, and then they came back in February and changed them again. So we're having some additions and subtractions, so we're getting it. We're keeping up to date with the information that they're giving to us as we get it. As always, we're extremely appreciative of the donations from our community. We have $2,980 in donations this month. There is a minor change, overall no change at all to the life insurance rates, but the carriers did a half-cent change from the basic to the accidental death and dismemberment piece, so we're just getting that in line with what they're charging us. And as I mentioned, we have 2 new student activity clubs on here. One is the class of 24 for the high school, and a student council activity group at Chapel Field Elementary. These are the items under the financial business at the bottom of the agenda. There are 23 items that we talked about were the tax year 22 real property complaints. This process is different. This is a result of the changes in law last summer with House Bill 126. Previously, I would initiate this with our legal counsel to look at property sales on business properties only, not homeowners, not residents, not single residents. These are businesses or apartments, if you will. So you'll see some Class 1, Class 2 changes. Class 2 is there's commercial, agricultural, commercial and industrial. Class 1 is residential, agricultural, but those Class 1 properties, they're apartment complexes. So when we go through that, they have, and I will give you the number here. Quick enough. Of the 23 properties, the sales price for these 23 parcels is $131,383,800. The current fair market value that is on the auditor's website is only $57,764,600. That's a difference. That's an undervalue of these properties of $73,619,200. What does that mean to Gahanna Jefferson Public Schools? It means $1.4 million in property taxes that we are not currently receiving that we should. This is just about property owners paying their fair share. This is an increase in taxes if we're successful with these for 1 year, but as part of that, in the inside millage, and where we get into full voted millage, effective millage, and inside millage, the inside millage, the 4.4 mils of that is $113,000. That will be ongoing revenue forever. The rest will be factored into when they do the tax reduction factor each year. So this is just all about making sure that the property owners, the business property owners, are paying their fair share, and that we get the $1.4 million that we're due this year. So you'll have those 23 items to approve for your consideration as a resolution, and then we'll proceed with that. With this, the board gets these. You didn't in the past, but now that's part of the new rule. And prior to them coming to you here, all of the property owners of these 23 parcels have been notified that these are being presented to you for your consideration tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Gooding.
Any questions?
We are on financial business then. Is there a motion to approve item number 6, which is H1 through H5 under letter H, financial business?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Coates. Is there a second? Thanks, Mrs. Horn. Any additional discussion about these items? I know that there was, thank you for the summary, Mr. Gooding, and there was quite extensive discussion about each of these items at Finance and Facilities on Tuesday. Anything else? Okay, Mr. Gooding, can you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Coates? Yes. Mrs. Horn?
Yes.
Mr. Manley?
Yes.
Mrs. Pickle-Antonio?
Yes.
Mrs. Mooring?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. Next, our Assistant Superintendent, Mrs. Elliott.
So I wanted to update the board on a few things and highlight a few agenda items this evening. Is some foreshadowing for a project we're going to be starting involving looking at high school scheduling, including school start times. This is something that we have had discussions about before and actually started work on pre-pandemic, and COVID paused that work. So we're going to be working with Mrs. Williams and her team, who have already been studying some options. There will be opportunity for stakeholder engagement. We'll take place over the course of next school year with the intentions of some possible updates for the 24-25 school year. I also wanted to note that as a part of our ongoing safety efforts, our technology department has recently contracted with Meta to upgrade and migrate phone systems, and one of the goals of this work included aligning our focus to bring our phone systems up to code in alignment with Carey's law. And so over the weekend we had some upgrades that allow us to automatically send alerts to designated staff members when 911 is called, as well as making it possible to dial 911 without using 9 to get an outside line. So that's a big step forward for us. Also wanted to highlight that we have no school tomorrow because it's a professional development day. Many buildings are using this time to review data from our recently closed map window. Some are hosting follow-up safety scenario sessions with support from law enforcement. And then our middle schools and high school teachers are also engaging in content-specific sessions led by our coaches and curriculum staff. To highlight a few agenda items, we have some overnight and extended trips on the agenda. That's always a great opportunity for our student athletes and club members. So we'll have girls softball, hoping to travel to Tennessee, the girls lacrosse team, hoping to travel to North Canton and Cuyahoga Falls, and then our ski club, it's not an overnight trip, but it's an out-of-state trip. So they're looking forward to traveling to Seven Springs, Pennsylvania. I also wanted to highlight our Eastland Fairfield agreement, some of the work we've been doing with our partners there. Dr. Deagle, our curriculum director, Ms. Holloman, and I had a chance to sit down with Dr. Miller and the Assistant Superintendent Shelley Groves. We had a great discussion in working through the contract that's before you this evening, and it was a nice opportunity to ask questions and talk through things just involving our partnership, how we manage space, materials, supplies, discipline, professional support. We did get some updated numbers. I know we heard a great presentation, as Mr. Manley mentioned last month. Just wanted to share we have 64 Gahanna students that attend Eastland Career Center, 27 that attend Fairfield Career Center, and then we have 89 students that participate in our on-site satellite programs. And then we have 6 students that actually leave and go to other districts for satellite programs. And then finally, we have 43 students that come from other districts into our satellite programs, but only 18 that end up staying for their full day academic programming. So wanted to share those numbers. And lastly, before action, you will see the Ohio High School Athletic Association membership. This is an annual renewal that allows our high school and middle school athletic teams to participate and operate under those bylaws.
Thank you, Mrs. Elliott. Is there a motion to approve item number 5 under letter I, which is items number I2 through I4?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Manley. Is there a second? Thanks, Mrs. Mooring. Any questions for Mrs. Elliott about any of those items or any of the things that she talked about? Thanks. Mr. Gooding, can you call the roll, please?
Mr. Manley?
Yes.
Mrs. Pickle Antonio? Yes. Mrs. Mooring? Yes. Mrs. Coates?
Yes.
Motion carried.
We are on letter J. Is there a motion to approve item number 21, which is approval of human resources items J2 through J19? Thanks, Mrs. Horn. Is there a second? Thank you, Mrs. Mooring. Any discussion about any of these items? Okay, Mr. Gooding, can you call the roll, please?
Mr. Manley? Mrs. Pickle Antonio?
Yes.
Mrs. Mooring? Mrs. Coates?
Yes.
Mrs. Horn? Motion carried.
We are on letter K, and welcome to your very first meeting, Mr. Hatzel. I will turn it over to you as our Chief Operating Officer.
Very much. I'm pretty convinced after watching tonight that I should have our students be guest presenters on my behalf because they are fantastic and very impressive. I don't have much tonight other than just letting you know that I'm getting acclimated with all of our staff in our buildings and our vendors and our projects and our contractors, gaining access to and understanding our systems so that we can have some familiarity with everything and then stay connected with our leadership team. I will say we had a master facility plan or committee meeting on Tuesday at High Point, and on tonight's agenda we're recommending the flooring that we would be installing in those 7 classrooms that will be renovated. That is one of the agenda items. And then really the other item we have on there is a payment lieu request in the transportation area. But other than that, it's been very exciting, very busy, a lot of great people, and I'm excited to continue the good work. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Hetzel. Is there a motion to approve items K2 through K3, which are the items under letter K? Thank you, Mrs. Horn. Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks, Mr. Manley. Any questions or discussions about these items? Mrs. Mooring?
And thank you for joining our team. Our budget, general fund, and all of the state is about $130 million. That's a big operation, and we've really been taxing our superintendent and assistant superintendent with not only teaching and learning, staffing, but all of the business items that go to run a 14 building district, and then when you add a $250 million phase 2 building project on it, it is overwhelming to think that the weight of all of the work that they have admirably done, right? Dr. Deagle and her predecessor, but to really run a properly staffed organization, you bring a wealth of experience, and we definitely have the work available. So welcome, thank you. It will be a lot, drinking from a fire hose, no doubt, but it will be wonderful to have your services here.
Any additional comments or questions? Mr. Gooding, can you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Pickle Antonio?
Yes.
Mrs. Mooring? Mrs. Coates?
Yes,
I
you say.
I said Mrs. Mooring.
Okay.
Yes, I'm sorry. Mrs. Coates? Yes.
Yes. Yes. Sorry.
Mrs. Horn?
Yes.
Mr. Manley?
Yes.
Motion carried.
We are on general business, and is there a motion to approve item number 24, which is approval of general business of the board items L1 through L23? Thanks, Mrs. Coates. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mrs. Mooring. Any additional discussion about these items? These are the items that Mr. Gooding described in his report and that were also discussed at Finance and Facility Committee meeting on Tuesday. So any additional discussion about these items? Okay, Mr. Gooding, can you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Mooring? Yes. Mrs. Coates? Yes. Mrs. Horn?
Yes.
Mr. Manley?
Yes.
Mrs. Pickle Antonio.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mrs. Mooring. Is there a second? Thank you, Mrs. Horn. Any discussion about that? Mr. Gooding, can you call the roll, please?
Yes. Mrs. Coates. Mrs. Horn.
Yes.
Mr. Manley.
Yes.
Mrs. Pickle Antonio.
Yes.
Mrs. Mooring.
Yes.
Motion carried.
It is 8:39 p.m. We are adjourned. I hope for those of you that have a 4-day break, I hope you enjoy the break. And to students, I hope you get a chance to sleep. And staff, I hope you get a chance to recharge. Thank you.